variants of hero archetypes that are relevant to women, and one of them is Beauty and the Beast. And, Beauty isn't interested in the guy who isn't the Beast. She's interested in the guy who's the Beast, and that's exactly right, but she's interested in the guy who's the Beast that can be civilized and disciplined, right, and who can use that in the service, well, let's say, of a family. And that's exactly how it should be.
So I gave a speech. One of my very good friends got married a few years ago, and I gave a speech. And at this speech, he was a friend of mine, Seal. And at this speech, I was talking about what it was to be a man and when I felt like I was a man. And I said there was three things that I felt let me transition from being, mentally insecure about who I was as a person to being, okay, I'm actually good with who I am. Number one was learning how to fight. Mm-hmm. And, I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts, and I learned how to fight. And now, all of a sudden, when I looked at other people, I wasn't posturing. I wasn't trying to pretend that I was tough. I knew that most people that I would encounter, I could defeat in a physical altercation. That was number one. Number two was going into combat. Because even though you might be tough in a street fight or in a fist fight with someone, when you're facing death, well, that's a whole nother level. And for me, going into combat, well, what was I going to act like? Was I going to be scared? Was I going to be a coward? Was I going to be scared of death? And when I went into combat, I wasn't. I was fine. I was okay with the fact that I could die, and I was okay with that. And I made good decisions and did what I was supposed to do. And the last one was I got married and had kids. Because all of a sudden, all these things, these being aggressive and working to fight and be able to destroy in an efficient way, well, then I took that and combined it with, okay, now I'm going to take care of my wife and our children, and that's what I'm going to do. And my point in giving this speech was he was a guy that had learned how to fight. He was a guy that had been in combat, and now there was one more step to take, which was, okay, now you're going to get married and you're going to take care of these people. So it's interesting that once again, that dichotomy that you talk about, it fits perfectly into the way I figured things out as a guy that went to high school and joined the military. It's kind of crazy, but it reinforces what you always say, which is that there's deeper meaning. There's a reason why I'm thinking that, and the reason is because of the things that you talk about and the way these things are overlaid throughout history for human beings to have gotten to this point.
Yeah, well, you acted it out, which is what you're supposed to do, and it's better to act it out and to understand it. That's best. It's better to understand it and not act it out than to not understand it at all. But the best is to act it out and understand it, and because then you can, then the way that you represent the world and yourself is in accordance with the way that you act, and that's optimized.
Yeah, and it's something that I was kind of acting out. Again, no real guide. Like my guidelines were like I was raised in the SEAL teams. That was sort of my guidelines. And here's a good example. When I first got in the SEAL teams, there was no war going on. So what did a good SEAL do? You know what you did? You went out and drank and got in bar fights. Mm-hmm. That's what a good SEAL did. So you know what I did? Went out and drank, got in bar fights. That's what I'm supposed to do. It took me a while to figure out, no, there's actually something more than that. Like we're actually supposed to be preparing for war. And so now, like you said, I definitely acted things out and sort of was on a decent path. But as I got older and more mature, and to this day, as I can look around and actually overlay the understanding on the way I've carried out my life, it's very helpful to me. And it also helps me explain it to other people that see the path that I'm on and go, they like that path. They would like to join me on that path. And I get guys that, when I was in, I look like a serial killer for all practical purposes. That's the way I come across, right?
Not creepy enough.
There's guys that would, guys that would work for me or guys that would be around me, and they'd see me and they'd kind of latch on to the fact that I was tough and aggressive. And some of those guys, they wouldn't catch the other part, which was that I was politically savvy and I was working and I was maneuvering and I was, figuring things out and talking to my boss in such a way that we could get where we needed to be. And I was doing that whole other side. And so I'd get these guys that would end up not doing as well as they should do because they were just, hey, Jocko's just ultra aggressive and he gets after it. And so that's what I'm going to do. And I'll be in the same place. The guys that would do well are the guys that said, oh yeah, Jocko's awesome and he's aggressive and he gets after it. He's also working and he's also maneuvering and he's also massaging the egos of the people around him. So make sure that they get positioned in the right spot where they can go to war in the right way. And so as I've gotten older, I've been able to tell people that more clearly. Like, hey, it's not just about that side of the ultra aggressive. You got to be aggressive. You got to be willing to fight. You got to be willing to kill, and you got to be willing to die. At the same time, you got to be able to temper all those things in such a way that they can be controlled and disciplined.
Well, I also think that that's part of what makes a world peaceful in the final analysis, because if you're around people who are dangerous but disciplined, then everyone watches their step. And that's exactly what should happen. Everybody should watch their step. And if there's no reason for that, then, well, there's no sanction for poor behavior, for example.